As senators continue their fight over health care, there are new feuds bubbling on the other end of Pennsylvania Avenue, from cracking down on leaks to weighing Attorney General Jeff Sessions' future, and the president calling for an end to transgender military service members. The White House is putting out a number of fires this week. We turn now to Karine Jean-Pierre. She's a senior advisor to MoveOn.org and a veteran of the Obama administration. And Matt Schlapp. He's the chairman of the American Conservative Union and the former deputy political director for President George W. Bush. And welcome to both of you, Matt and Karine. Speaking of fires, I have to ask for both of you first about a remarkable story that has just appeared late this afternoon in the New Yorker magazine, Matt. Essentially, it's the new head of communications at the White House, Anthony Scaramucci, placing a phone call last night to the writer Ryan Lizza and screaming at him, wanting to know who leaked information about a dinner, using very strong language, threatening and saying, I need to know who the leakers are, saying he's gone to the FBI, the Department of Justice. What's going on at the White House?
Well, on my drive over to the studio, I was going to have my 14-year-old daughter read this article to me. I'm glad I didn't, because it does have some colorful language. I think Anthony Scaramucci is already out on Twitter apologizing for the language. But I think the key here is that this whole question of leaks inside the West Wing, it is a real cancer. And for those of us who want President Trump to succeed in his agenda to succeed, it's been a real distraction to getting the agenda through. And I think Scaramucci is trying to take care of the leaks. And unfortunately, he thought he was having a conversation that was off the record, but apparently he didn't make that clear with the reporter.
Karine, what does it say when you have this level of leaking and animosity going on inside the White House this early in the administration?
Well, it's quite insane. I worked in the White House in the Obama administration. I've never seen anything like this before. But if this is Scaramucci's role is to take care of the leaks, that's really going to be a full-time job for him. And honestly, Judy, if that is something that he's truly working on, he needs to start in the Oval Office. He needs to start from the top all the way down. That's where the leaks are. It's not the junior staffers. It's the senior staffers, starting with Donald Trump, the president. And the senior staffers are just trying to save their jobs, and that's why they're leaking as the way that they are. But also, this is a reason why for the first 6 months of the administration, this administration has not been able to get anything done. They haven't really passed one piece of major legislation because of stuff like this.
Matt, what about that? The fact that it's not lower level people who are talking to the press, it's people up and down and going all the way to the top of the White House.
Yeah, so I mean, there are always leaks that come out of the White House, and sometimes those leaks are intended to inform the press in a kind of an anonymous fashion. But what's happened in the Trump White House, it's just a melee of leaks where people are leaking on each other in the West Wing.
Why?
I think that the White House, the West Wing wasn't set up to be efficient and successful from the very beginning. I think they actually can look at the way that they set up the West Wing, and there's not a kind of a sheriff in town. I remember when I worked for Andy Card in the West Wing, and he told me, especially when I took the job as political director, he said, if you overstep your trust with the president, there'll be a cardboard box on your desk, fill it and leave.
Well, I was struck.
Now, he didn't do that to me, but he would have done it had I overstepped the boundaries.
I want to stay with you just a moment, Matt, because there's a line in here that really strikes me. Ryan Lizza with the New Yorker writes, he said, unlike other Trump advisors, I've never heard him, meaning Scaramucci, say a bad word about the president. So he's saying everybody else is criticizing the president who hired them.
Well, I don't want to get into, and I don't know these conversations. All I can tell you is that one of the issues as the West Wing was pulled together and the staff was pulled together is it was kind of an interesting concoction of people that weren't really with the president's campaign. So he did pull together people, maybe in the hopes of kind of like bringing kind of unity to the party. But there, you know, it has always been fearful that you had people who were either never Trump or didn't have much respect for the Trump, for President Trump, who got senior administration positions. And, you know, I worked for a Republican president who I admired and who I loved, and I would have just done almost anything for professionally. And when you don't have that spirit with some staffers, it can cause a lot of problems.
Karine, I know I'm asking you as an outsider and somebody from the other party to weigh in on this, but do you see a solution here?
No, not at all. Look, I think I've said this before on your show, Judy, which is the fish rots at its head. This is the type of environment that Donald Trump has set up. He has brought in the corporate life, the way he was as the CEO, as the head of Trump Organization, and brought it into the White House. He loves this stuff. He loves the inner fighting. He likes when they're fighting for his, the dear leader affection of Donald Trump. And so it's not going to, it doesn't matter if it's Scaramucci, it doesn't matter who it is, it doesn't matter if Priebus stays or leaves, it starts with the person at the top, and that's Donald Trump.
All right, two other things I want to ask you both about, but first, the announcement by Twitter yesterday from the president that he wanted to ban all people who are transgender from serving in the military. And Matt, I want to go back and show everybody in our audience, this is what the president had to say last year, just a year ago, that this was the day after the Orlando nightclub shooting. He gave a national security speech in New Hampshire, and here's what he had to say.
Ask yourself, who is really the friend of women and the LB and LGBT community? Donald Trump with actions or Hillary Clinton with her words? I will tell you who the better friend is, and someday I believe that will be proven out big league.
So, Matt, how do you explain the transgender military decision?
Well, for 7.5 years of the Obama administration, they had a prohibition that equates to what President Trump announced. Now, all we have is a tweet. I don't know what it means in detail. I don't know what it means for the people serving, but you get to this basic question, right, which is, what do the commanders want in the field, right? And I think that what was intended by this administration, at least what Sarah Huckabee Sanders said to expand upon the tweet, was that he's listening to the services on what they want. And for 7.5 years in the Obama administration, they had a similar plan, not because I think there was animus towards transgender people or the gay community. I think it was because they were simply focusing on what generals were saying they needed to be ready in the field. But this will all be handled in Congress. The funding all goes through Congress, and we'll have a Democratic debate on whether or not this should happen or not.
And Karine, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Joe Dunford, said today that they said, we're waiting for guidance. Right now, we want to continue to respect everybody in the military.
That's right, Judy. Look, usually when you make this type of policy, you articulate it on paper, you create a policy, you don't tweet about it. And so the Pentagon can't actually act on this. They can't act on a tweet. They were never given a piece of policy. And so once again, you have a president who doesn't care to learn, who doesn't know how the process works, and uses Twitter to really feed his base, and that's what we're seeing. And look, the other part about this too is that he made that promise during the election. It was an outrageous comment when we heard it. No one really truly believed it, and it became a lie on day one of his administration. This is not an administration that cares about brown people, black people, or transgendered or LGBT communities. We've seen this, or women.
Matt?
I don't think that accurately describes Donald Trump's heart. I've talked to him about these sets of issues. For 7.5 years of the Obama administration, they had the very same policy, and I don't think President Obama was discriminating for those 7.5 years. And I think the next question on
You're
this
saying
is
it was only at the end when they changed the policy.
They changed it at the end, but really the military hasn't fully understood how to implement this, and Secretary of Defense Mattis and all of the service chiefs knew that they were in the process of review. They have been discussing this. People who track this issue knew that they were trying to figure out, could this be implemented or not?
But still no paper. It was a tweet.
Well, the announcement is completely unconventional. It's hard for somebody like me to even explain what the implications are. The country needs the details on that, so I think Karine's point on that is very fair.
Very quickly, finally, to both of you, Karine, you expect the Attorney General to stay where he is, Jeff Sessions, given what's going on?
Well, I'll try to be really quick here, Judy. Look, I do not think the Attorney General should be the Attorney General. I think he is a racist. I think he has racist background, and he lied and perjured himself in front of Congress. But that's not the reason why Donald Trump doesn't want him in the job anymore. He doesn't want him in the job because of the Russia thing. He was upset that Sessions didn't recuse himself, and he wants to fire Bob Mueller. That's why he wants to get rid of Sessions.
President Trump does not want Jeff Sessions to leave the office of the Attorney General. I think what President Trump is saying is he is frustrated that his special counsel was picked without it even being run by Jeff Sessions, and that investigation seems to be overshadowing his presidency. When you have seen the leaks that have come out against Donald Trump, when you have seen that the DNC has a staffer that's worked with the government of Ukraine, there are plenty of things on the other side of the ledger that I think Republicans would like to see DOJ look at as well.
He's been pretty tough on this Attorney General, though, the last few days.
He has been.
Yeah.
Matt Schlapp, Karine Jean-Pierre, thank you both.
Thanks, Judy.